Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what has to be, without a doubt, the ultimate enduring cold case of human history. For centuries, we've all marveled at the greatest monuments of the ancient Egyptians and asked ourselves one seemingly simple question: how in the world did they actually build them? Well, today, we are going to reconstruct the scene of the crime, or I guess the scene of the climb. We're breaking down the physical mechanics, the grand master plans, and an absolutely stunning recent archaeological revelation at a site called Wadi al-Jarf that honestly changes everything we thought we knew and matters more today than ever before.
6 million. That is the estimated total tonnage of the Great Pyramid of Giza. We are talking about roughly 2.3 million individual blocks of stone, with some weighing upwards of 60 tons each, hoisted high into the sky. It is a staggering, just mind-boggling scale of operation. To this day, it stands as one of humanity's most impressive engineering achievements, leaving modern engineers and physicists literally scratching their heads at the sheer logistical mountain the 4th dynasty Egyptians had to climb.
And, the mystery is only getting deeper. For over a century, the traditional archaeological consensus has been relatively straightforward, right? The pyramids were primarily tombs for pharaohs with just a few internal chambers. But recently, things have gotten a lot more complicated. New radar data suggests the presence of massive, perfectly geometric underground spaces and shafts hundreds of meters below the Giza Plateau. We are looking at a pretty neutral split in the community right now. While traditionalists are working to understand how these readings fit into 4th dynasty capabilities, others point to this as potential evidence of a technologically advanced, predating civilization, basically suggesting the Old Kingdom Egyptians simply inherited the site.
So what does this all mean? Did the builders of the pyramids rely on some form of lost, ancient technology? Or are we drastically underestimating the sheer brilliance of human logistics, mathematics, and organization? Well, in this explainer, we're going to look strictly at the hard archaeological, mathematical, and physical evidence. We're going to see exactly what the ancient Egyptians were capable of and figure out whether human muscle and ingenuity are enough to explain the impossible.
Section 1. Symbolism and Unified Master Plans.
Okay, to really understand the Great Pyramid of Khufu, we actually have to look backward at the macro-level mystery of his father, Pharaoh Sneferu. Sneferu was one of the greatest builders in human history. For a long time, Egyptologists thought his various pyramids at Dashur were just, evolutionary trial-and-error mistakes. But recent architectural analysis tells a completely different story. They were a brilliantly unified master plan. Sneferu's Red Pyramid was aligned to the north, built with reddish limestone to symbolize the flat red crown of Lower Egypt. The Bent Pyramid, with its steeper, conical shape and white limestone core, sat to the south, symbolizing the white crown of Upper Egypt. This wasn't a mistake. This was a gigantic, petrified political statement. Sneferu wasn't just experimenting, he was creating a permanent landscape, asserting his absolute dominion over the two lands. The pyramids were always part of an incredibly sophisticated, highly organized state project.
Section 2. The Physics of Heavy Lifting.
Now, it's one thing to have a symbolic master plan, it's another entirely to actually execute it and haul a 6 million ton political statement into the sky. A recent comprehensive feasibility assessment by Cadence AI ran the math on Khufu's Great Pyramid. And let me tell you, if you have 2.3 million blocks and a time frame of about 20 years for Khufu's Ran, the math is totally unforgiving. It means the workforce had to sustainably place approximately one block every 2 to 3 minutes during daylight hours. That requires a material flow rate of about 340 cubic meters of stone every single day. That is an insane speed. No single construction method, like just using one long ramp, can mathematically account for this without causing a massive traffic jam of workers.
But the Egyptians had some brilliant tricks up their sleeves. Physicists at the University of Amsterdam recently tested the ancient Egyptian method of dragging heavy sledges across desert sand. They found that by pouring the exact right amount of water on the sand right in front of the sledge, it actually binds the grains together. This simple, completely elegant physics trick cuts the required pulling friction by 55%. A team of just 50 workers could easily generate enough force to pull a 2.5-ton block. They literally halved their workload with a bucket of water.
Now, what's really interesting here is that they clearly understood mechanical advantage. Look at this workman from the Tomb of Ti using a lever. It gives us solid evidence of their mechanical know-how. The laws of statics and mechanics might not have been written down in textbooks back then, but through trial and experience, they knew exactly how force intensification worked. By using a lever with a 4-to-1 arm ratio, just 4 workers could lift a 2.5-ton block enough to slip a roller underneath. And they went way beyond simple levers.
If you look at the wainscot on the west wall of the antechamber in Khufu's pyramid, you'll find these semicircular grooves. Architectural researchers point out that these are the physical footprints of heavy-duty winch systems. Ancient engineers laid round crossbeams or rollers across these grooves. Using thick hemp or palm raffia ropes coiled around these beams, they could safely lower or haul massive granite plugging blocks that weighed tons using just a fraction of the raw pulling force.
Section 3. Logistics, Waterways, and Administration.
But here's the thing, physics alone isn't enough. Moving millions of stones at a rate of 1 every 2 minutes requires an unprecedented level of logistical administration. And that brings us to this man, Hemiunu. He was Pharaoh Khufu's nephew, but more importantly, he was the vizier, inspector of all royal buildings. Hemiunu was the logistical mastermind who effectively ran the entire state economy to make this monument possible. He was managing a rotating workforce of 20,000 to 30,000 people. He wasn't just an architect, he was the ancient equivalent of a supreme supply chain commander, coordinating quarries, food supplies, housing, and transport. To bypass the impossible friction of dragging millions of stones over land, Hemiunu utilized Egypt's greatest natural advantage, the Nile. The system worked in 3 highly efficient steps. First, extract the brilliant white limestone from the Tura quarries across the river. Second, utilize a complex network of Nile branches and artificial canals to float the massive stones on barges. And third, deliver them directly to the Giza Plateau's inland harbor, practically at the base of the construction site.
Section 4. The Climax. Why Wadi al-Jarth matters.
Now, for a long time, these incredibly efficient logistics were mostly theoretical, deduced from the landscape and the math. But a 2013 discovery, hidden in caves on the Red Sea coast at Wadi al-Jarf, changes this entire debate from a cold case into a closed case. Archaeologists found a cache of papyri there, and among them was something astonishing, the Diary of Mirror. Mirror was a middle-ranking inspector who led a team of about 200 sailors and workers. This is the oldest written document ever discovered in Egyptian history. It's just an everyday logbook, but its contents are absolutely explosive for anyone who studies the pyramids.
The diary literally reads like a spreadsheet of the pyramid's construction. It details the daily transport of Tura limestone blocks via boats along the Nile and its canal networks directly to the horizon of Khufu, the Great Pyramid. It names the specific workers, the administration, and crucially, it dates this activity exactly to the 27th year of Khufu's reign. We are looking at a literal, first-hand receipt written by the men who built the Great Pyramid.
So why does Wadi al-Jarf matter so much to us today? Because it definitively grounds the Great Pyramid in our shared, human reality. The Wadi al-Jarf papyrus totally silences the speculation that these structures were built by an unknown, lost civilization or through levitation and magic. It confirms that the 4th dynasty Egyptians, under Khufu, had the exact administrative framework, the exact workforce, and the exact water-based supply chains required to move millions of tons of rock. It proves that the breathtaking scale of the pyramids wasn't achieved by supernatural means, but by human sweat, meticulous record-keeping, and unparalleled logistical administration.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We often want to look at something as magnificent as the Great Pyramid and attribute it to magic, aliens, or lost ancient super technology, because, frankly, it seems too great for ordinary people to achieve. But when you look at the math of wet sand, the engineering of winches, and the daily diary of a worker like Mur, you have to ask yourself, isn't the documented reality of human coordination, ingenuity, and sheer force of will actually so much more awe-inspiring than any myth? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it completely changed how you look at the ancient world.